Hi everybody, how are you all doing this week? It's so cold, isn't it? Goodness knows what happened to summer. I think somebody just turned the sun off or something, and today it's been pouring with rain and freezing. Anyway, we're still renovating Kevin's mum's house and it's going well. All the wallpaper's stripped, and this week I learnt how to fill in the chasing that the electrician had done so that he could fit the new wires. It's always good to keep learning, and my son-in-law Lee has been fantastic at teaching me as I go. Kevin has been working with the gardener to clear the garden and fix the shed and the summer house. And my son Lawrence's girlfriend came down last weekend and painted the summer house, seagrass blue, looks lovely, totally transformed. She says she really enjoys painting, so I'm thinking that the shed could do with a transformation too, so perhaps I'm going to try and persuade her to come down again. Anyway, this week I'm driving down either on my own or with Kevin to Kent to continue working in his mother's house. And sometimes on our journey, we listen to a podcast from a well-known speaker. And lately we've been listening to Alan Scott from Anaheim in California. It's a Vineyard Church. We first heard him when he used to lead a church in Coleraine in Ireland and often spoke at new wine events. Well, this week he was interviewing a Christian leader called Mike Bickle from the House of Prayer movement in the US, which started about the same time as Pete Craig's 24/7 prayer movement. They're pretty much the same thing, really. It was a really interesting interview, and I felt something begin to stir inside me about prayer, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to look into this. I feel like this might be a nudge from God, really. Anyway, in his interview, Mike talked about the various Bible passages that from the Old and the New Testament that the whole movement was based on. And one in particular, Mark 11:17, which says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." On their website, it says, "The International House of Prayer in the US is an evangelical mission organisation that is committed to praying for the release of the fullness of God's power and purpose. As they actively win the lost, heal the sick, feed the poor, make disciples and impact every sphere of society. They pray for families, education, government, the economy, arts, media and religion in their nation. They see their role is to work in relationship with the wider body of Christ to engage in the Great Commission. And as they seek to walk out, and they do this as they seek to walk out the two greatest commandments, to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbour," which I talked about last week. He also mentioned in his interview that 10,000 years BC, King David set up a tabernacle in Jerusalem and set a precedent of day and night worship before the Lord that continued in various times through Israel's history. Each time this order of worship was reintroduced, spiritual breakthrough came along with deliverance, and military victory followed often. Mike continued talking about how his movement is an army of God nationwide, who waits on the Lord 24/7, listening to him, hearing his words, which they then pray back to him. And although God could just sort things out himself, after all, he is God, he still wants us to work with him. God waits on us while we wait on him. He wants conversation. He doesn't just want us sitting there with a long list of requests. He wants us to learn his ways more. And that is a two-way conversation. So I began to think about this and wondered where we're needed to be headed as a church, perhaps praying more intentionally, seeing an amazing change happening here. It always starts or begins with prayer. So I then decided to listen to Pete Gregg on my next trip to Kent because he started the 24/7 prayer movement in this country. But in actual fact, he didn't set up to start it, it just happened. And as he says, as it says on his website, at the beginning, young people flocked to the first prayer room, even at night. They prayed with words, graffiti and weird music, and God seemed to like it. and liked it a lot, in fact, and just resided there. And it says even atheists said they could feel his presence. And then one day, the whole thing just went viral and spread across the world. If you haven't read Pete Greig's book called Dirty Glory, then please do. It's the whole story of how things began and the amazing way God has moved in the 24/7 prayer rooms across the country and the world. And the incredible answers to prayer. It's such an amazing, inspirational book. And if you haven't read it, I really urge you to read it, because it really inspires you to get down to some prayer. Anyway, as I listened to his interview on the YouTube, he talked about what a difference prayer is making in this country already, particularly in London. He says the churches are growing and every denomination in church planting, the churches are growing and every denomination is church planting, which immediately brings life to an area, and then the church just grows and people join. He says we are seeing a calling for prayer much more in this country. Justin Welby started Thy Kingdom Come, getting people to pray more. People are longing to see an outpouring of prayer, and this is actually happening in our nation. On our watch, in our time, people are getting saved easier. There is an opportunity around austerity in this country to make a difference. He says the media are recognising that the church is helping people in struggling times. And in Wales, for instance, they have been struggling in austerity much longer than we have in this country. And people know that when they go through hard times that they can just turn to the church for help. And then the church can get alongside them and support them. And they come to know about Jesus and the hope that he brings. Pete Greig was saying this 8 months ago. That's when the talk was, before he even knew about COVID-19. So just think what a difference our prayers will make now, and how many people will come and look to us for help. People will have lost their jobs or their companies, and they will be recognising that all the things that they'd put their hope in, like a career or a home, will have no meaning now. That they'll realise that those things can all go in an instant, and they are left with nothing. What else will they turn to? We have to be ready with the good news, with compassion, ready to help people and show them there is a different way with Jesus. People need hope and a reason to live. You know, as we crossed over the bridge yesterday to Kent, there was a huge tailback because someone had walked onto the bridge and thrown themselves off it in the early hours of the morning. That has to be someone so desperate with no hope, in total despair, to make you do something like that. But we can make a difference, and it starts with prayer. On Monday, here at St John's, the church is opening for individual prayer. It's an opportunity to come into the church and pray, to be intentional. Some of you will prefer to just pray at home. But whatever you do, we need to up our prayer time and spend more time daily seeking him and knowing him more, because this is how we will change our parish and make a difference. One of the things you can pray about and be involved with is that we're going to be putting up a regular prayer tent outside Cost Cutters in Orchard Village and outside in our church car park. If we have enough, that's if we have enough people to help us do that as well. So let us know if you're interested. There'll be a large tree of life where people can hang their prayer requests and we can pray with people. And it's a great opportunity to meet with people and just talk to them. So please be praying about that. And also, as we begin to get back together after the church has officially reopened, hopefully on Sunday the 5th of July, there will be prayer and worship nights where we can just come together corporately to spend time in his presence together and really pray together about issues in this area and in our nation. And we could just wait on God's presence and see what he's saying. I just want to share a dream with you that I had on the 1st of June. It was more like an audible voice which said, I'm sending an army of people to pray, and their prayer will be like a jug of milk pouring into the area. And I thought, a jug of milk? So I looked it up in the Christian Dream Dictionary. Did you know there was some, no one realised there was a Christian Dream Dictionary? Well, there is actually. And I do have quite a few dreams, so it's quite good to know that. So if you're a person that dreams, try looking up the meaning of it, and it helps you to decipher what you feel God might be saying. Anyway, when I looked it up, the significance of milk, it means one, that milk represents choices we need to make that we know are good for us and will make us stronger. But also milk generally denotes kindness, nurture and compassion. And I wrote underneath that morning, I think we need to go out into the parish of South Hornchurch with compassion and the love of Jesus, and it needs to happen from a base of prayer. So please get praying, people of St. John's. We need an army of people. Start practicing at home, and when we can all meet together, we can then continue. I just want to finish with Pete Gregg's acronym for prayer. It's actually the word pray, but it's quite good, and it helps you to, pray. So anyway, P is for pause. It says, be still and know that I am God. Stop doing anything, just be there. Breathe deeply and center your thinking. In Pete Gregg's latest book, he tells a story which relates to this word. He says, when he arrives home from being away for a while, which he often is as he speaks all over the world and his boys are upstairs, probably playing together, and he shouts up to them, hello, I'm home. They don't rush down and see him. They say, oh, Dad, tell him to share, or what's for supper? So Pete would say, hello, nice to be back. And then there would be a pause and they'd run down the stairs, give him a hug and then say, what's for supper? We are like that with God sometimes. We just barge into his presence and say, what's for supper? Whereas he might just like us to give him some undivided time and a hug. So R is for rejoice. This is when you remember all that God has done in your life, and it builds your faith as you remember all those things. You can also rejoice by reading a psalm, listening to worship music. This helps you focus on God and reminds you of all the things that he's done as well. A is for ask. Speaks for itself because we're all really good at asking. And Y is for yield. Surrender again to God. You listen to him. You say, I'll go anywhere. Do anything for you, God. Or this might be just the place you come to confess some sin or some unforgiveness that you discover that you're holding against someone. He also suggests that if you're going to do that with children, it might be better to have yield as yes, because not all children will understand what yield is, and it's better for them. And this can be done individually, or we could all come together and do it as a group. But it's a great way of just coming into God's presence and spending time with him and learning to hear what's on his heart and how we can pray. So I hope you have a really prayer-filled week. Thanks. Bye.